We are running out of time, and we do have one more panel. And no, you're coming up, both of you are. We're going to focus on the little role of a producer for this next panel. And specifically, we're going to be looking at how kind of underrepresented that role can be. But equally, we're going to be talking a lot about co-productions and working across different nations and kind of abiding by different labor laws in each of those nations. And what are the pitfalls? What are the pros? So I'd like to welcome, please, to the stage, Joanna Szymanska and Marek Novák. Hi again. How are you? Good to see you. How are you? Good to see you. Right there. Okay. Well, thank you for being here, both of you. Joanna, I know you're based in Poland, and Marek, you're based here in Prague, correct? So, and both of you have worked across numerous co-productions, to say the least, yes? So I think I would like to start, because this is a pretty big topic, and I'm aware of this clock ticking in front of me, so I'm trying to think how we can get to the biggest, most important bits first. But let's talk about, I mean, co-productions are just kind of a natural, a kind of way of existence for indies in the CEE. I would love to know a little bit about maybe nations that you have worked with on productions that it has been kind of smoother, and, or dare I say, or nations that, you know, it's been a bit more difficult, because there's obviously different laws that you have to abide in each culture, or in, you know, labor laws and different ticks that you have to meet in different countries. So given your expertise in this subject, maybe you can each shed some light on where it works and where maybe it hasn't.
Well, thank you for having us, and it's a very tough act to follow what Maciej was just describing, because in circumstances like that, co-productions are vital to our individual markets and our individual artistic work. I had the pleasure of working with numerous countries, really, from UK, Germany, France to Slovakia, Czechia, and I don't think it's that much dependent on the nationality you work with as much as it is on the partnership with the team and the producer you work with. Of course, labor laws, the practicalities of it can be very daunting, and I think my favorite anecdote is working with French crews that just have to have a midday break, and they want to drink wine during that break, and that's something we wouldn't really allow on Polish film set. But I think these can be turned into a very playful anecdotes if you're working with the right team and the right producer who is also able to offset these problems, and that's, I think, the burden we are carrying, that we very much in co-productions become these kind of heavyweight lifters who have to carry on their backs this whole legal scheme and liaising with your national institutions, etc., so the co-production can work smoothly.
Yes. Hi, hello everybody. Thanks for having us. I couldn't agree more with Joanna that it's definitely on the major element in this type of cooperation is the particular people you work with, because there are always differences and different rules in place and different interpretations of rules and different cultures of interpretations, etc. And I think for producers, like the daily, day-to-day operation is figuring out stuff, and that means always finding out the right way to eventually make things happen. Fortunately, usually in our work, it's not like life-threatening, or we can be more flexible in the sense of finding what is the best for a certain situation, for a certain project. And yes, there are all kinds of differences. I have had the pleasure to work with, to co-produce with Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Italy. And of course, there are, as the cultures are different, the working habits and rules are different, and then it of course leads to more or less funny anecdotes, but it's only great experience to then further build on. And if the vision is shared and the goal, the objective is shared, then there are always ways to get there.
You both mentioned people, like that's the first thing you say, rather, you know, you're making sure you have the right partners. Does that mean then that you find yourself doing repeat work with the same producers in different territories, or is that not always the case?
I would say that's a sign of a good cooperation if you actually want to work with another person and the same person on another project. I do have partners I would definitely like to come back to, of course. But I think it's also important to mention that it's, especially if you're working with markets of different sizes, that the mindset also has to be in place. And by mindset, I mean that there has to be this kind of equitable approach, that we will never be equal. I mean, Polish producer, Slovak, Czech producer will never be equal to a French producer in terms of economical power, financing sources, etc. So by the equitable mindset, I mean that the French partner or the bigger partner also has to understand that it is a partnership, it is a co-production, and that there needs to be a certain understanding that, for example, if we are shooting a film with a mixed crew, Polish people cannot be expected to pay less because their labor is cheaper, you know? Or there has to be an equality in how you reward the extra time or, you know, additional time. And I think this is something we don't talk enough about, because the financing, as you all are fully aware, has become more and more difficult, and it also positions independent producers from smaller countries in this precarious position that we have to step up. We have European ambitions, but then there's this gap where we can't match, you know, the bigger partner or partner with more economical power. I think there's still a lot of work to be done also on the political level and funding level.
I would just shortly add to it, but that there can also be like the relative power of a certain market, of certain funding, because there is a difference between what you can get for a certain amount of money in France or in the Czech Republic, for example.
It's really interesting that you both kind of touch on this, though, because as you say, rightly say, financing, there's less money out there. You know, inflation the cost of productions has risen everywhere, and there's a tightening of belts or budget belts. And when you are someone who is trying to structure, however big of a production it is, 2 million to 10 million, you are looking for cost savings at every avenue. And if you're going to a nation where the cost of work is cheaper, you know, somewhere in Central Eastern Europe, how do you, as the producers representing those particular nations, when working with a bigger nation, how do you kind of fight for kind of a bit more equality, as you say, on the pay, you know, on the kind of paying of crew and all of that kind of stuff? What do those conversations look like? And also, what kind of backing and guardrails and support can you be given from your nations to help that? Big question, but
yeah, I mean, asking for justice or equality in this sense, I think it's probably not gonna be there clearly easy to discover, because in putting together resources and people from different economical backgrounds will probably always lead to certain paradoxes. But I think it's often fair to look at for example, with crew members or like people working on a project, to look also at their residency and the costs of living there. So it's only fair if they are paid relatively equal amount, not in absolute numbers, but in relative numbers. I think that's the key to deal with it. And I totally agree that these things should be said out loud in the most simplest terms, so that everybody understands the thought behind it.
And I think what you said earlier about understanding and sharing a vision, I mean, if everybody is making the same film rather than people making a different type of film, even if it's the same project, it really helps to have these conversations. And I would also add maybe that, because you ask how this can be supported, I would say I would really like to stress the role of public institutions, because I think one of the biggest challenges we are all facing is when there are issues and when there is heat, and there will inevitably be issues and heat because these are co-productions and it's a work of art. that our institutions should stand behind us rather than generate even more challenges. And I think that's really important, that also people who are in position of power, of policy making, that they are aware of how co-productions or international productions work, rather than be, as we just saw, very much narrow-minded and focused only on their own agenda. I think that's extremely important.
Mm-hmm. What about in terms of looking at kind of mental health and burnout? And you've both worked on productions. They're intense, obviously, to say the least. And it's not just the shoot, it's the prep that leads up to that, of course, which can be. But this is a big topic at the moment everywhere. How do you guys kind of navigate that with people you work with in terms of, especially when co-producing, the laws are different in different countries, right? So I'm just curious as to your thoughts on that topic.
I would say that, first of all, this is only a job, and we have a right to be, not only rewarded, but we also have a right to take rest or break or feel that this is overwhelming. And I think last year here was a very interesting panel about exactly that, how to create a set or how to create a working atmosphere that is supportive rather than exploitative. And I do believe that it's a matter of, again, changing the mindset and adapting this understanding that even though it is a creation of art and it's something that's a creative act, but it also is a job that needs to be, regulated in a way of working hours, expectations, having days off, etc., etc. And I had the experience of burnout, of course. Of course, as a lot of people of my generation in this industry. And what I can say is just be very attentive to how you feel. Be open about how you feel. Share your troubles with your co-producer, and go to therapy. That's it. Just treat it.
I would just follow up on the word share it. I think sharing in the broadest sense of the word is one of the, in my opinion, one of the most important elements in this work, because it by default can be very lonely, very long-term, and very unpredictable and very hard. But by sharing, meaning sharing the work itself, co-producing with other producers, co-producers, but even if it's not directly related to a certain project, just sharing the thought, either with a therapist or with other producers, with your network, national, international, having a producers association which can be cultivated to cater to much more than just policy lobbying, etc., which I would like to, I'm glad that the Czech Audiovisual Producers Association is doing a very good job for the community and the industry in more topics than including well-being and the sustainability of the work. So I think those are very, very important things to have in mind to be able to do this.
Mm-hmm. I would love to ask each of you if you could give us a little case study, an example of a project that each of you have worked on, a co-production that went smoothly, or as smooth as can be, and maybe kind of share why you think that worked in 1 minute. You have 30 seconds each.
I don't think I had an easy, smooth case of a co-production, really. But I can say that whenever there was something, there was an issue, there was a problem, what solved or what helped to solve it was really clear communication, being honest with your partner, and also trying to see this problem, whatever it was, as our problem, rather than you take care of it because it happened in Poland, Belgium, or whatever. And I think that's, I'm sorry I can't have this very easy answer, but all the problems can be solved from my perspective.
I also don't think there has been a case of something that would go very smooth, but I feel that is actually normal because that's our work to figure out stuff. And my takeaway always is that that everything should be said in the simplest form possible, because it's we usually nod at each other when we speak, and you think that people believe, not believe, but like think that what you are saying is the same what they think, but it often is not. So I like to be as trivial as possible in whatever discussing numbers, discussing credits, discussing deliverables, etc. I think it's very good to not be afraid of being very trivial.
And have a good lawyer as well.
Communication and openness is key. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Yes, we'll be continuing this, I think, in the afternoon.
Yes,
extended version in the afternoon at 5:30. Thank you, guys.
You.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.